Welcome to the Governance and Audit Committee meeting of Tuesday the 27th of September. Can I welcome some new faces around the table? It is nice to see individuals in person, and it's nice to have company in this rather large room. If we can then go through the agenda. Apologies for absence first, please.
Apologies from Councillor Kelly Roberts and from Rob Stewart.
Thank you very much. I don't think we need to receive Rob Stewart's apologies because he's not a member of the Governance and Audit Committee, so there's no need to record that apology. If we can then take the next agenda item, disclosures of personal and prejudicial interests, please. Any disclosures? No, not seeing any. Oh, there's a hand up. Councillor Leslie Walton.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Item 4, Governor of Dylan Thomas Community School.
Thank you, Councillor Walton. No other hands up? No. We can move on then to the minutes of the meeting of the 13th of July. We can take them page by page for accuracy, please. So that's page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, page 7, page 8, page 9. Can I have some hands up if they're accurate, please? Yeah, thank you very much. Before we move on to the next agenda item, can I just pick up something I spotted that Jeff Fish, our fraud member of the team, has now left to move to another job. Can I wish him all the best from the Governance and Audit Committee members, and also to thank him very much for the work that he's done in providing his reports to the team. So if we can just pass that message on to Jeff Fish, please.
A brief fair to Jeff and John. They've been very, very thorough when they brought their reports to us, and been very helpful to the members of the committee when we've asked questions. So yeah, Jeff was a very good officer.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. So if we can move on then to agenda item 4, which is the internal audit monitoring reports. And I believe, Nick, you're going to take this report?
Yes, that's correct, Chair.
Yeah, if you go ahead then, Nick.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thanks, Chair. Good morning, everyone. I'm Nick Davis, the Principal Auditor. I have a couple of documents to present today. The first being agenda item number 4. That's on page 10 of the reports pack, which is our Q1 monitoring report for the period the 1st of April to the 30th of June 22. The second is agenda item number 5, which is our follow-up tracker report for the same period. Again, just to remind members that both reports are for information only, and as usual, I'm just going to highlight the main points listed. Any questions, happy to answer at the end. I'm also conscious today that we have a large agenda, so I'm just going to try and rattle through as best I can. So if members and officers can turn to page 10 of the reports pack, the first document, Q1 monitoring report, and this shows the audits finalised during the period and any other work carried out by the team. So the top of page 11, 18 audits were finalised during the quarter. The audits finalised are all listed in Appendix 1, which show the level of assurance given at the end of the audit and the number of recommendations made and agreed. Appendix 2 provides a summary of the scope of the reviews finalised during that period. 2.2, an analysis of the assurance levels are listed in the table below, and you can see that 7 were awarded a high assurance and 11 a substantial assurance. 2.3, paragraph 2.3, a total of 84 recommendations were made. Management agreed to implement all of those recommendations, which is 100%, against our agreed target of 95. 2.4, all recommendations made are classified as a high, medium, low or good practice risk, and below is a breakdown of those 84 recommendations, and you can see 17 were medium risk, 55 a low risk, and 12 a good practice. Moving down to paragraph 2.8 on page 12, give committee a little bit of an update on the team. So some of the team's time in this quarter has been taken up with assisting an office move within the Guildhall. Pleased to report to committee now the team has access to a shared agile working area within the Guildhall, which we can use for up to 3 days a week. And some more developments really. Paragraph 2.11, staff sickness within the team has been quite significant during the quarter, with a total of 32 days of absence recorded. And at the time of compiling this report and presenting this report, those 2 members continue to be absent due to long-term sickness. Paragraph 2.12, in addition to the sickness noted above, 2 auditors have left the team. One has retired and the other's moved to a different position within the council. And as a result, we've had 2 vacancies within the team, or I should say had, because some positive news again to update committee is that we've now had those 2 vacancies have been filled, and we hope to have those new members in the office within the next month or so. 2.13, there were no audit reports issued with a moderate assurance level in this quarter. I think if we can move down to the appendices now, Appendix 1 on page 15, you can see the list of the 18 audits that were finalised during the quarter. Appendix 2 shows a summary of the scope of those audits that have been finalised. And finally, Appendix 3 shows the annual plan and the status of each audit as at the 30th of the 6th, 22. Okay, and any questions?
Good morning, Nick. Thank you, Chair. Just got 3 points to raise with you, Nick, on this one. If I could start with your pie chart in 2.2, that's showing that based on the 18 audits you've completed so far, you've got 60% showing substantial assurance and 30%, well, sorry, almost 40% showing high assurance.
Yeah.
So that's painting a pretty good picture. On the basis that the risks, or certainly the audits are selected on a risk basis, does that picture accord with your expectations? Or would you expect to see at this point in the year at least some moderate and some limited reviews coming through?
Okay, yeah, thanks, Phil. It all depends on what audits are allocated during which part of the year. So it just so happens that the audits, and some of them in that list are from the previous year. Yeah, they can both. It could be high assurance or substantial, but it just depends which audits are allocated and which when we undertake them during the year. So, we have got some moderate audits which are coming through now, which will be coming through on the Q2 reports. But as of Q1, there were no audit reports with a moderate assurance rating.
Okay, thank you, Chair. If I could just pick up the other 2, they won't take long. In 3.1, in your commentary there, you mentioned you do have some sickness absence. It's actually in 2.11.
Yeah.
Are you making use of agency resource or contractor resource to top up that shortfall that you're going to be having, particularly if you're going out to recruitment, there's going to be a gap?
Short answer, Phil, is no. As I said, we've got 2 vacancies which we've now filled, and we're hoping to, get them in. Well, they've been appointed, and we're just waiting for some start dates for them. One of those members of staff is part-time, so it's not a full-time post, but we are hoping to have those 2 members of staff back shortly. But at the minute, they're still off on long-term sick.
So, Chair, just as a follow-up then, if there's a long-term sickness absence, it is going to impact the resources available to internal audit. So, Nick, is that something you're willing to take a look at, the use of agency or some kind of cover to get that plan delivered?
Yeah, possibly Phil. I'll need to speak to Simon and possibly Ben on that. But yeah, at the minute we are hoping to get those members of staff back soon. As I said, we recently made 2 appointments as well. But yeah, it's something that I'll probably need to speak to Simon and Ben on if we think those staff are going to be on, for a long period of sickness. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Just a final point. Thank you, Nick. In 3.3, you say that there were no audit reports with a moderate rating followed up in the quarter.
Yeah.
So are you saying that there were no reports that were moderate, or there was just no work done on those reports?
There was
Which
no
way round is it?
Yeah, thanks, Phil. Yeah, there was no work done on those reports. There was when we issue a standard assurance rating, or sorry, I should say a moderate assurance rating, we do give the client service time to get those recommendations and in place and implement them. So yeah, what we're just saying there, Phil, is that there were no follow-ups of any moderate reports done in Q1.
Thank you, Phil, and thank you, Nick, for answering those. Can I just mention, with regards to the issue around sickness and absence and your ability now to recruit into 2, if you can just consider the risk associated with non-delivery of the plan. We've still got some time to go in this period of 22-23. So I'm assuming that you need to do that risk assessment, and if there is an issue, perhaps you could give us a heads up sooner rather than later in non-delivery. But I agree, Nick, you need to speak to Simon and to Ben regarding that matter. Okay, if I can go to Gordon next, please.
Hi, Nick, thank you. If I can take you to page 17 on highways and transportation, 18 unpaid invoices, which have been ever over a year, relating to presumably bus issues, and yet the bus station manager doesn't seem to be in the loop at all.
Page 17, sorry, yeah, Gordon.
Yeah, do you hear me?
Yes.
It's the
Sorry,
Swansea
could you say
City
that-
Bus Station.
Could you say that again? Sorry, Gordon. Page 17, yes.
Page 17, highways and transportation, the issue with unpaid invoices over a year old.
Okay,
And
yeah.
yet the responsible officer, who presumably is the bus station manager, doesn't appear to be in the loop at all.
I'll have to take that up with the bus station manager, sorry, Gordon, to get the detail of that. But I can certainly get back to you on that, yeah, rather than give you an answer straight off. I'll need to get the detail behind that response. So, yeah, thanks for the question, Gordon.
Thank you, Nick. If you can bring that back, you can pop us an email and I can circulate it if that's easier.
Yeah, no problem at all.
Okay, Julie Davis.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Nick. You mentioned that the team has moved to a shared agile working area. I understand in terms of optimising council resources that a shared working environment is the way to go. But could you explain how you achieve data security in a shared area, especially if the Chief Auditor and the fraud team are working in an agile environment?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Julie. It's quite simple that it's shared, as in we've got shared days. So whenever we are in the office, the other sections aren't in on that day. So it's a shared as in days each. All the cupboards that we've got, the remaining files are all locked, the doors are locked. And as I said, it's when we are in, as in the audit and the fraud team, then no other personnel from any other sections are in.
Thank you for clarifying. And I do have a second quick question, if that's okay. In Appendix 2, the Nature Conservation Review states that documentation relating to 3 grants received wasn't available at the time of the audit. Could you explain what escalation processes are in place to ensure that auditors get timely information to support their audit opinion?
Yeah, it's certainly something that we would follow up. If we haven't been given that information during the review, we will report it and it will go in the audit. And as I said, we will chase up that when we carry out a follow-up. So there is an escalation process. And if we don't get that information, we'll certainly look at it during the next audit review that we undertake. And if needs be, then we'll escalate that individual risk to a higher level if that again appears to be the case on the second review.
So is the audit report classed as finalised if you don't get the information, or is it?
Yes, we will. It depends on how many times we ask. We will ask. We won't continually ask or keep on asking it, and it depends on the information as well. But if we ask a number of times and we don't get it, then we do log it in the report as we haven't had that information, and we will follow that up then. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Councillor Jeff Jones.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Yeah, Julie has actually brought up one of the points I was looking at with regard to the, the agile working. You say you've actually got 3 days a week. Who do you actually share that with? How is it working? Is it working okay? How many staff does it accommodate? Does it accommodate all the audit staff that you've actually got or need to actually use that space? And how long is it going on for? Any ideas?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Jones. It's a permanent arrangement as far as I'm concerned so far. We share it with 2 other sections and yeah, it's working well. Not all audit staff are in on the same days. It's there to be used as and when. So yeah, at present there hasn't been a full audit team in there because obviously some audit staff are working remotely. And they don't need to be in the office at the same time. So it's working well as far as I'm aware. I've spoken to staff, they're happy with the setup in the room and security of documents and so on. And it seems to be working well. And it's a permanent arrangement going forward as far as I'm aware.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Nick. Nick, can you bear with me a minute before moving on to the next report? It was a miss of me at the beginning not to highlight the performance review report, agenda item 11. I'm proposing that this report be deferred to a future Governance and Audit Committee on the basis that it needs to go to Scrutiny Committee before it comes here. It's something that Councillor Chris Holly and I agreed some months ago, and we've received it a bit too soon than we should. So I'm proposing that we defer this until it's been through Scrutiny Committee where they can do the work that needs to be done. And then it'll go on to Cabinet and then back to the Governance and Audit Committee, along with a presentation from Councillor Chris Holly to give us assurance. So if I can ask for support that the report be deferred, please, from members, that would be helpful. I've got 3 hands around the table, and there's some hands up on the screen. So if we can defer that, and I have already emailed Councillor Chris Holly, so he's aware of what has happened and what we've decided to do. So thank you for that. If we can move on then to agenda item 5. Nick, if you can carry on with the internal audit follow-up report, please.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Chair. So agenda item number 5 is on page 29 of the reports pack. And it's our internal audit recommendation follow-up report for our standard audits. again, which committee will be familiar with, and it provides information on the status of the recommendations made in those reviews where the follow-ups have been completed in Q1. It's a short report, which is pretty self-explanatory. So if we just move on to paragraph 4.6, we put our results into a table, and you can see that the level of recommendations there are high risk, medium risk, low risk, good practice. The risks that have been accepted and actually been implemented for medium risks are 6 and 6. For low risks, accepted 23, implemented 21, good practice 21 and 18. And again, pleased to report to committee, well, at the request of committee, we've now added some graphical representation to our follow-up report. And we've now included a bar chart in place to show those figures to make our reports a little bit more user-friendly. So there's nothing really more to go through here, apart from maybe if we move down to Appendix 1, we can see the audits that where the follow-ups are completed, and Appendix 2 shows any recommendations that are not implemented and the reasons from management why they haven't been. Okay, I'm happy to accept questions.
Thank you, Nick. Any questions on this report? I think it's a standard follow-up report, and pleasing to see the actions are being taken. Julie?
Thank you, Chair. Just a question on paragraph 5.1 in terms of the external audits recommendations tracking. Has there been any progress in that, please?
Paragraph 5.1, Julie, was that?
On page 31.
Okay.
I think this is the IT system that Richard Rowlands was developing, so that may be a question for Richard rather than Nick. But Nick, do you know if there's an update on it? The question's been asked.
Yeah, no, I haven't been informed of any update, but happy to speak to Richard for you, Julie, if you like, to get an update on that.
Okay, would Richard be able to come in now?
I think this is on our action tracker at the end of the meeting as an outstanding item. So we can deal with it now, or we can deal with the tracker. Richard, are you able to comment now then?
Yeah, sure. So yes, the electronic system that we have, we're now working on building that system. And once that system is built, then obviously we'll have to roll it through the council and do the training on it as well. But in the interim, we do have an arrangement in place to make sure that external recommendations are recorded. We have a shared inbox for Audit Wales communications to come into, and we have the chair, though the chair is having difficulties accessing the inbox. We've got an alternative arrangement there. We'll copy the chair into the necessary emails, but the chair of the scrutiny programme committees and that shared inbox as well. And we're working with scrutiny to make sure that all of this is tied up, so that when we do get reports from Audit Wales, the recommendations are recorded and are tracked appropriately.
Thank you.
Thank you, Richard, for reinforcing that message. It's something you've confirmed previously, but it's good for our new members to understand that intermediate action has been taken pending the introduction of the IT system. Okay, is that it, Nick? I've got no other hands up, no other questions. Thank you, Nick.
Yes, that's it, Chair.
Thank you, Nick, for standing in for Simon. And if we can now move on then to Richard. This is your paper, I believe.
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Corporate risk reverse.
Thank you, Chair. So the report provides an overview of corporate risk during the first quarter. You can see in paragraph 2.2 that all of the corporate risks were reviewed at least once during the first quarter. The changes that took place can be seen also in paragraph 2.2. We have 6 red risks in the corporate risk register as at the end of the first quarter. Two new risks were added to the register. One corporate risk was deactivated and a further risk was escalated to the corporate risk register, and 2 risks had their status moved to amber, and all the reasons for that are recorded within the risk register itself, ready for audit purposes. We have a snapshot of the corporate risk registers at the end of Q1 as an appendix, and that's on page 44. And that sets out the corporate risks, which are the overarching risks that affect the council. And these are the risks which are identified and overseen collectively by the corporate management team each month. And each of the risks, we have a member of the corporate management team identified as a responsible officer. And there's a guide to the various headings within the report, which you can see in paragraph 2.3. And since this report was completed, the annual review of the corporate risks has been undertaken by the corporate management team, and that will be reflected in the Q2 report, which is coming to the committee in November. Thank you, Chair.
Julie Davis.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. Richard, you've partly answered one of my questions, because I was going to ask, as this is a review for Q1 risks, obviously in the last couple of months there have been a number of risks and issues that are facing the country, and I was concerned that in this report, for example, risk ID 269 regarding the local economy and infrastructure was last updated on the 2nd of June. So you've answered that there has been a review of all risks and potentially new risks identified. Could you? Sorry, carry on.
Sorry, Judy. Yes, you're right. I mean, this is the Q1 report, so it is retrospective and looking backwards. But you're quite right. Corporate management team have undertaken a thorough review of the corporate risks, and you will see that reflected in Q2, and that includes a reflection of the issues that you referred to.
Okay, thank you. And my second question, which is very minor detail, risk ID 196 in terms of workforce strategy, it's noted as deactivated. I've not seen the term used before in risk management. I've seen closed or completed. So could you explain what is deactivated and in what circumstances that is applied?
Yeah, sure. So it is in effect closed, but we use the term deactivated just in relation to our risk register, because although we close the risk, it's never actually removed from the system. So if that risk occurs again in future, we can reactivate the risk on the system.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you. Gordon.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's the language in the document. If I can take it to page 49, the middle point in the narrative, it says the Section 151 officer will issue forthright and formal advice on the adequacy of budgets. Now, I would assume that every advice that he gives will be formal and forthright. What does that sentence mean?
It's I think all the sentence is saying really is that the role of the Section 151 officer is to provide advice to corporate management team and to the cabinet on budgets, in terms of making sure that the budgets take into account, the financial situation of the council and the broader context as well. So I think it's only really saying that. It's just highlighting the role of the Section 151 officer in terms of providing that professional advice specifically to the corporate management team and to the cabinet.
I'm sure Ben would like to comment on that as well, Gordon.
Yeah, if I could come in, Chair, thank you very much. I mean, you're right in one sense, Gordon, that's almost taken as read in terms of ultimately the gatekeeper of the finances, but the language is deliberately chosen by myself because it will come as no surprise to the committee that there is going to be a growing cognitive dissonance between some of the political lenses and operational lenses that this council and all councils are going to face. I was going to come in a little bit earlier because I was equally going to draw members' attention on asks around staffing and such like to the advice I will have to give Cabinet on Thursday. It is deliberately darker in tone in the report, so you are right to read more into that than perhaps ordinarily would have been the case. It's just a simple reality of where we are. I think the position is very bleak for the public finances and the public sector and all councils, and I will give appropriate advice on the record starting with Thursday at Cabinet.
Thank you, Ben.
Okay.
Any other questions, Phil Sharman?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, if I could. First of all, for Richard, what I'll do is I'll probably hold back then my general point about what was senior management's view of the level of risk across the council based upon your report for Q1, because I was pleased to hear that CMT have now conducted their annual review. I think that is going to be significant. I think in particular, there are a number of what I might call persistent red risks here, which I would expect there to be some focus and action on. And I'm hoping that would have come out of the review that you've indicated. I won't draw you on it now, but that was just a backdrop. But the other thing on that, Richard, is that and noting that Chair has quite rightly asked for the agenda item, I think 11, to be deferred until it's been through scrutiny. I fully understand and support that. But what I would ask, Richard, if behind the scenes you could just try and reconcile some of the content of that performance report and self-assessment with the risks that you've identified in your report, because some of those seem to be out of kilter with the performance report that was now deferred pending scrutiny. If I could just go on to now perhaps a couple of specific risks. The first one, and I'm hoping that Ben is still available, is on 159 on financial control and the medium-term financial plan. It's showing as a red risk. And if I could just ask, without perhaps again drawing Ben too much on his more formal statement to council later, whether the situation has worsened since our earlier briefing in our training that the local government financial settlement more generally was looking favourable in the case of Swansea, and therefore I wasn't expecting to see it right away as presenting as a red risk in this respect on 159.
Ben, do you want to come in on that?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's whilst the settlement was good in nominal terms when the budget was set, and I gave advice to the then council, phenomenal in nominal terms, surreal in real terms, and the events of the last months and now weeks and days and now hours, I would change it to extremely surreal. So again, there are reasons for it being red. It can't go higher than red because that's the highest colour we have, but clearly, again, the advice I need to give in terms of especially the medium term outlook is looking growingly bleak. That should not come as a surprise to this committee. It should not come as a surprise to Cabinet on Thursday. I do not think there is a commentator in the land who is not concerned about the pressures going forward. Obviously, I'll give more formal advice on Thursday and in due course, but the position has undoubtedly significantly deteriorated. And I make no apology for that. I will say clearly my advice. It's out broadly of Cabinet and Council's control in the short term, but I will have to give advice as to the consequences in the medium term. And while that will sound fairly shocking, there will not be a Section 151 officer in the land who would not be saying exactly the same, in my view, at this point in time.
Very good, thank you. Just one other specific risk if I could pick up, and that is on safeguarding. Richard, I realise this isn't you know, as being the risk manager, this isn't necessarily your area of expertise, but it did flag up on the report. And I think I was particularly worried that the red risk on safeguarding is long running. And I was going to ask whether the mitigating actions in this area are working in practice. Now, Chair, I'm happy to save the answer on that until we have perhaps the director available or even the CMT's view. But those are just two I picked out for focus.
Okay, yeah, I think the answer to that one is for another meeting, and I'm aware that there is scrutiny. Yeah, there's a November meeting where I think we've got the director concerned, but there are also arrangements in place within the council's committee structure where some of that is given a lot more airing and discussion. Richard, do you want to add to that?
Yes, just to come back on the earlier point around the annual review performance, just to point out that the report is centred on the previous year, so it's 2021, 2022. So it's not an up-to-date current picture of performance. It's retrospective. It's looking back at that previous financial year, which probably explains why there is a difference in tone in terms of how some of that information is presented.
Thank you, Richard. Are there any other questions? I'm not seeing any hands up. No. Thank you, Richard, then. Thank you for everyone for participating in that paper. It's one that's got greatest impact for this committee, and it's got a high level of importance, so we need to keep a track on that, and which is why we have the directors rotationally coming in to give us assurances and additional source as well. But I appreciate the work you put into it, Richard, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, if we can move forward then and welcome Helen Morgan-Rees to present our Education Directorate report. Welcome, Helen, to the Governance and Audit Committee. I appreciate the time you've taken to produce the report and to come and to present it. So if we can assume that we've read the report, but pick up those points that you think would be of the highest feature for the Governance and Audit Committee members, please.
Thank you, Chair. It is an information report. Obviously, the internal control environment of the Education Director is very much under scrutiny, and indeed Appendix A and Appendix B of the report make reference to our corporate and directorate risks, and particularly in Appendix B, the assurance map there provides you with assurance around the corporate risk that we have in education, which is to ensure that no child or learner in Swansea has a bad education, an education that is substandard. So in terms of the report itself, I'll draw attention to the certain sections and then invite questions at the end. And we do have the author of the report with us today in the meeting, Kelly Small, as the new Head of Service for Education Planning and Resources. So in terms of section 1, it provides an overview of the key elements in terms of controlling resource and the linkages between planning and risk and specific arrangements we have within our directorate in relation to the school's delegated budgets. Section 2 of the report provides details really of our risk management in relation to Appendix A within today's report, and it itemises our risks currently. Section 3 then provides further detail on linking the measures of success to our current priorities. And Section 4 provides governance arrangements to ensure that our collective decision-making and accountability within our directorate is clear and well understood. And Section 5 then gives further detail on budget controls. Also in the main body of the report, you have 3 annexes. Annex 1 provides you with a clear understanding of how our directorate is structured in terms of accountability and decision-making. Annex 2 provides terms of reference for key groups within our directorate that are involved in decision-making and risk management. And it also includes the terms of reference for performance and financial monitoring. And Annex 3 then provides an overview of the governance in terms of our quality in education programme, in terms of our capital buildings for new and better schools in Swansea. So those are the key highlights of the report, and happy to take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Helen. I'm sure there'll be some questions from members. Councillor Small, would you want to comment on that report?
Yeah, just to add really that you've probably noted that the large proportion of our budget is delegated out to schools as well. So we've got that robust management on behalf of schools and that scrutiny as well. So just to note, I think there was a pie graph at the start of the report we had.
Okay, thank you. I'm not seeing any. Oh, Julie Davis. You're on mute, Julie. Julie, you're on mute.
Apologies. First of all, can I recognise the favourable Eston report that you've recently received? So I think that's worth commenting on. In paragraph 2.2, you explained that the corporate online system is used for risk management. Does this also apply to schools? Because I recognise that schools have a fair degree of autonomy. Do schools use the corporate approach, or do they have their own risk management systems and processes in place?
Thank you for the question. The answer is the schools use their own risk management arrangements, and it's not linked to the corporate system.
Thank you. So in that case, could I bring in Nick and ask you to look at including risk management on the school's audit programme going forward, please? Because we won't be able to get assurance from the corporate risk management review.
Yeah, thanks, Julie. Yeah, I know you've brought this topic up before, and at the minute we are doing thematic school reviews, which has been planned in for this year. So we will be talking to our education colleagues about building in some risk management and possibly including in next year's plan. But it's a conversation that I'll need to have with Helen and probably Kelly to see how we're going to work that in, and possibly what areas we're going to look at in the schools. Yeah.
Okay, would you be able to report those conversations back to Audit Committee?
Yes, of course I can, yeah.
Thank you very much. And my second question, Helen, is about the risk ID number 91 and 308 in the Appendix A. It's in relation to the SIM support. I was wondering what contingency plans you have in place if SIM support ceases, or if the SIM servers fail before a cloud solution is in place.
Thank you, Julie. Can I defer to my colleague, Kelly Small, to answer that question, please?
Okay, thank you.
Hi. Yeah, that's why it's on the risk reg, I think, isn't it? Obviously, because we are struggling at the moment. Our schools have just bought into a 3-year contract with SIMS, so they are getting support directly from the company at the moment, but we are working to consider alternative solutions. So when that contract does end in 3 years' time, or just under 3 years' time now. Can I just answer something from your previous question as well about the risk for schools, because we do give schools quite a lot of training and support on areas. We do financial training for leadership staff and governors, and we do cover things like procurement in there, but we are going to have our own specific procurement training in October, November, I think is scheduled for. And we also do training on things like IR35, sort of employing staff through invoice and things like that. So if we find an area we think schools need support, we will give them additional training.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that, Kerry. Gordon.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, on page 94, headcount reduction. Presumably that is in the education department rather than in schools. And if that's the case, if you are monitoring it, what is the implication of it not being achieved? And are the censures in place?
Helen, are you able to answer?
I'll try and answer. I think the headcount reduction there is in reference to our centre of staff within the Education Directorate. We do monitor that carefully, and it has to be balanced really against the resources available to us. So as Ben alluded to in his previous comments around the overall budget, obviously that forthright advice we get as directors within CMT is very much a live issue for us. So the need to make efficiencies against dwindling resources is something that we have to balance with our capability and capacity to deliver our services. But we do monitor that headcount very carefully internally.
How close are you to achieving the 2010 target?
I'll have to come back to you on that detail in particular. I'm really sorry, I haven't got that right in front of me this morning, but I will come back to you with that answer to that question, if that's okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bill Sharman.
Thank you. Yes. Could I ask Helen, as the director, if you could explain the relationship between the risks or the area of greatest assessed risk on in paragraph 2.5 of your report and the corporate risks which are managed by the CMT? And Helen, I'm thinking in particular of the risk we saw in the previous report on the corporate agenda was risk ID 94, and that is pupil attainment and achievement, which I do understand is an amber level risk, but nonetheless is clearly important for the whole of Swansea and you as director. But if you could just explain to us the relationship between the two, that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Okay, I think my understanding of the question is that our directorate level risks are such, and we also have a layer of service level risks as well. So I guess the overall corporate risk for us is children not receiving a good education. And I think you're alluding to the fact that we have potentially a number of risks at a lower layer that are not at the corporate level. And is your question really in relation to whether those risks should be escalated to a higher level? Is that my understanding?
It's not so much that. It's more about in terms of the departmental, the directorate level focus. When I looked at 2.5, I was surprised that I didn't see the corporate level risk 94 on pupil attainment as appearing there.
At a directorate, obviously we separate those risks into directorate level risks, and then the corporate one is separate. But certainly at a directorate level, we are very much attuned to that overall corporate risk as well. So the mitigations and the quality of the control measures really are achieved by whole departmental thinking around that corporate risk. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question. I'm not sure if I've understood the question well enough to answer it.
No, I think you're getting there, Helen. It's really just a bit of confidence for me that the fact the risk was identified as a corporate risk didn't remove the directorate from its clear responsibility and obligation to manage and move that risk down in terms of its its management. Because I do understand in 2.5 you're focusing there on the directorate level risks. I just didn't want you to lose sight, and I want some assurance you weren't losing sight of the corporate risk on pupil attainment more generally.
No, absolutely not. I can give you that assurance as the responsible owner for the corporate risk. That permeates really throughout our directorate. So all the work we do, the sum of all the parts across our services feed into that mitigation and those actions to mitigate against that risk at a corporate level. So I can give you that assurance that it's very much considered as part of our strategic leadership board in education, and then further to that across our managers and our business units. Each of those business units is aware of that corporate risk.
Thank you. I've got Jeff Jones's hand up for a while, so can I bring Jeff in, please?
Sorry, Chair. I did take my, what I thought I'd taken my hand down, actually. It was a question very close to what Phil was actually asking. So I've not got a question now.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Mike?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Kelly or Helen, perhaps, in regards to section 2, performance of financial management, so under the area of purpose, you've obviously got the area which you've had quite a few issues previously over how schools use the procedure for procurement. You know, many members who've been on panel for a while, when audits are carried out in schools, procurement has mainly been the one that has sort of jumped out of us really as a panel. And I know that we have now a scrutiny committee on which we worked on, and have put recommendations about having advice for schools with that. You know, they got guidance on how procurement should work. But you said obviously about the implementing the training. How long do you think this will take to take to train the schools in regards to the process of with this areas of service, seeing that we are going to be in very difficult times, no doubt, and schools have obviously got a school development plan and they're planning for implement measures in the schools, so you're going to have to, governing bodies are going to have to actually sit down with the head and senior management team of these schools and prioritise now what they can actually achieve within the school development plan. But in regards to the training on procurement, which is a big chunk of the schools' budgets that they use for works that needs to be carried out, and for other measures to be implemented in the school to give support to the children. How long do you think that this procurement programme will actually take to roll out with all the schools of this training?
Kelly, is that something you can have?
Yeah, so what we've done, we've reviewed the procurement guide for schools recently. It has led to us having to refresh all of the accounting instructions for schools as well. So it's been quite a big piece of work, but we are going to launch that. Like I said, it's October, November. I can't remember the exact date, but of course with schools now being able to access Teams, it does make it a lot easier to be able to train a lot of people at the same time. So we are going to open that out to the head teachers and other leadership staff in the schools, as well as the admin staff. And I have been working with Chris Williams in procurement as well. And, you know, we are looking at whether we can support schools with buying, you know, together, and, you know, not just looking at individuals, whether any contracts we can help to schools to buy, you know, better with as well. So, but it's not something we're going to just do once. Obviously, this is something we've already put markers in our diary that we will refresh all of these documents every year now, going in and provide the training probably termly as well, like we do the finance training. It is, yeah.
Thank you very much. I'm not seeing any more hands up. So can I pass on my thanks to you both for attending to present that report. And I have to say it's a very comprehensive report. I did like the governance structures that are illustrated in the appendices. They were very clear, and I took great level of assurance from that, as I know my other independent member colleagues did. So thank you so much for that, both. And if you wish to leave now, you're welcome to do so.
Thank you, Chair.
We can move on to agenda item 8, is the absence management audit report update. For information, and Adrian Chard is going to present this one. Welcome, Adrian.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Can you all hear and see me?
Yes, we can.
I assume you can. Okay, thank you. Yeah, so really this is an update report on the situation with regard to management of absence in the council. We have provided, there was an original audit that was undertaken in 2020 where an assurance level of moderate was given, and there was an action plan that was put in place, not just as a result, of course, of that audit, but also in response to some of the points that were raised as part of that audit report. Just to sort of identify the highlights that's been mentioned in the report, there continues to be an improvement in the completion of returns to work and record of action meetings, and I can provide, the service centre can provide further detail of that if that's required by the audit committee. In terms of general sickness absence levels, that I have to say that no, they continue to remain high. However, you know, we do have a number of mitigating measures in place to support the management of absence across the authority, particularly with regard to the appointment of management of absence advisors that are in place across our place, our education and our social services directorates, where I think it's fair to say that they're doing really good work in supporting managers in managing sickness absences in those areas. And some of the measures of success that they've put in place are detailed in 2.5 of the paper. You'll be aware that we are currently undergoing implementation of a new Oracle Fusion project, which will provide additional real-time information for managers to support in the management of sickness moving forward. Monthly reminders are issued to managers with regard to management of sickness absence, and I've been assured that that has had a positive effect in I feel like identifying areas for support and for training for managers in those areas. We've also worked in close consultation with our trade unions to review and relaunch our Dying to Work Charter. We were the first council in Wales, I understand, to implemented that Dying to Work Charter, and in fact the first council that have reviewed and relaunched that Dying to Work Charter in recent times. You will see that in terms of occupational health, there's a range of support that's been provided by the occupational health teams via Occ Health assessments and counselling support. I've received an update in terms of the number of occupational health referrals. The report refers to the periods 2019 to 20 and 2021 to 22. I've received updated figures which I can provide the audit committee subsequently, which indicates that the levels of referrals to occupational health have remained pretty steady. I've been advised that those levels tend to drop in the summer months, which has been the case for July and August, but have remained steady at the highest of 110 referrals in April and 85 referrals in May, which then goes up to 100 referrals in June. So I guess that concludes a sort of summary of the report, and would welcome any questions.
Thank you very much, Adrian. Do we have any questions? Gordon?
Chair.
Oh, Gordon first. Sorry, Mike.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, point 3, your sickness data. April to July 22 is showing 5.48%, which is then qualified in the paragraph after that. What is your estimate for the end of year figure?
I would estimate that it would remain sort of pretty high. Last financial year, it was around, if I can refer to the paper, bear with me.
15.4%.
15.4. I would estimate that it will be around there. We're still, you know, if you like, suffering from the effects of COVID, and that's where where one of the largest instances of absence has resulted from, if you refer to the pie chart in section 3. So I would imagine it would still remain pretty high, to be honest with you, and I have to say that, you know, particularly with regard to the challenges that we will face as an authority moving forward, I think to some extent that will be reflected in sickness figures.
Right. I mean, the final column there gives us 5.48 for 3 months.
Yeah.
If we were to extrapolate that then over a year to give us a figure is 22%. And if we take the 25% representation of COVID, We're still talking of a sickness absence rate in excess of 16%, are we?
I would say so, to be honest with you.
Right, that's awfully high.
Yes.
Mike, do you want to add to that?
The question I had, really, Chair, was about the actual management absence advisor. What exactly is the remit, Adrian, and also in regards to 2.5 management under the management absence advisors. You say obviously strengthen the links open health and arrange review meetings with the teams and to the managers. How often would you assume this would be carried out, so that everybody's joined up to know exactly about what the process is and procedure? And in regards to manager training and guidance and upskilling, have any programs started yet, or is it in the process of being started up to give this training for managers to and so they fully understand the sickness and absence policy?
Yeah, thanks. So I'll in terms of I'll take those questions one at a time. In terms of the remit of the management of absence advisors, that really is dependent upon the particular issues that are faced by the particular section and that particular directorate. So but overall the HR the management of absence advisors will be working closely with the managers to ensure that there is proper governance with regard to compliance with the management of absence policy, and identifying areas where there is need for more dedicated support. So for example, in some areas there might be an issue with regard to long-term sickness, or there might be an issue with regard to intermittent levels of sickness, and they will provide that dedicated support and working closely with managers to help address those issues. But also it's not just a case of managing absences when they arise, but looking to identify areas where we can avoid sickness absence happening in the first place, and providing support for managers to support staff in those areas. So as I say, in terms of the detailed report, that you can see that there are specific actions and activities that are related to those particular areas. But if you just refer to the police directorate, they are the one management of absence advisor that's covering that area will concentrate on one section at a time to basically ensure that managers have the right skills and the right support in place. And I guess that comes back to your final point around sort of the provision of training. Training is ongoing. There isn't one sort of set period of training that's available for managers. Training will be provided to managers as and when appropriate, and there is e-learning training available for managers to draw on constantly and consistently. And that includes training via occupational health with regard to stress awareness, as an example. Does that answer all your questions? I wasn't quite sure that there wasn't another question there, Councillor.
I just said that it was just joined up working, really, Adrian, that, from the process of within that department where there was members of staff working. Obviously, you say in place, we got some of the main frontline services there, which we got to have operating every day, and obviously manual jobs as well, where you're going to have that more of an issue with sickness and absence, But I just wanted to have the assurance that that from the manager and the advisors to Work Helps, that everybody is aware of exactly what the procedure is.
Yes. So certainly the management of absence advisors that sit under my responsibility, I know work very closely with occupational health to ensure that we have a joined up approach, shall we say, to management of sickness in those areas. So if there are any particular shall we say issues with regard to access to occupational health services, we as management of absence advisors work closely to ensure that any sort of barriers or any issues are addressed to smooth that process as much as we possibly can.
And is that monitored across all departments then to make sure that system is working as it should be?
Yes, certainly. The management of absence advisors, as I say, will undertake that role, and they work quite closely as a sort of virtual team to ensure that there's consistency of approach across all of the different directorates and sections that we support.
Thank you, Adrian.
Okay. Gordon, did you have a follow?
Sorry, if I can just come back on the table again. The bottom figure, is that a percentage?
Sorry, the bottom figure on
the bold figure on the bottom of the table 3.
Yeah, no, that's the average days FTE sickness per FTE. So, for example, in terms of, so that isn't a percentage figure, it's the average days sickness per full-time employee.
Right, if we're expecting that to be 16 across the year, your comment in 6.1 that there are no financial implications. The two don't sit together, do they? Must be a certain amount of backfilling for sickness absence.
Well,
if I could come in on that point, Adrian, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
We adopt the convention that financial implications are attached to the individual report. So the report is a for information item, and so the report itself does not drive financial implications. But Gordon is absolutely right. That sort of imputed level of absence clearly results in substantial spend by all directorates who are having to backfill and cover absences. So that's the reason why we don't attempt to price it in isolation on this update report. But you're absolutely right. At that sort of level of absence across the year, it would run into a very substantial sum, but that has to be reflected within individual directorates' budgets, and they have to live within those budgets, notwithstanding the level of sickness. So I just wanted to clarify that point. And that's what you see in a number of policy-related reports. So you won't see direct financial implications attaching to those reports.
Thank you,
it would be useful for that sort of comment to be in this report, I think, because otherwise we're looking at it in isolation.
I take that point, and ordinarily we do have slightly tighter financial implications to make that point, that if there are none directly associated with the report, there are still knock-on or consequences. So I do take the point raised, Gordon, entirely.
Thank you. Can I invite Jeff? Sorry to have kept you, Jeff.
No, it's quite right. I've been quite interested in actually what people have been bringing up. No, it's what Gordon actually, sorry to harp on about this pie chart and so on. You know, I would have thought that when you strip out COVID, it would make, you know, quite a difference. Well, it is going to bring it down, as you said, to about 16. But there seems to be quite a problem in social services, an ongoing problem. Is there any special attention actually given, shall we say, to social services? And I know we got the pie chart there that actually gives an overall picture, but is there a pie chart specifically for, shall we say, social services as to why, you know, the sickness is so high? Is it stress or whatever? You know, have we got that sort of detail? And perhaps, sorry to harp in on to social services, but we're actually getting a lot of remote working at the present time, and I assume that's going to be something for the future. Does that affect sickness at all? You know, are people who actually work remotely less likely to actually go sick? And, you know, going back to social services, I'm assuming a lot of the staff there can't work remotely anyway. They're actually out in the field. So, you know, is there some sort of correlation between working from home and levels of sickness?
I guess just to answer your last question first. I haven't got the raw data to to confirm or deny this, but my view is that for those staff that are able to work agilely and working from home, their sickness levels would be less. That's my view from having my team working from home, and I think that will be sort of the general view across the council, but I haven't got that data to back that up. You're right, in terms of social services, you'll see that there's been a lot of work with regard to the management of absence advisor support in the social services area. I could again produce a pie chart to identify the levels of sickness in social services and the instances of sickness of absence in social services and the reasons. And I can provide that information, but I would again make the assumption that that there would be a broad sort of correlation between the corporate instances of absence by reason and the social services instances of absence by reason. They will be primarily due to coronavirus and stomach and digestive issues and stress and mental health issues. But again, I can provide that information should you need that.
Okay, and going back to Ben and so on, I'm assuming that when budgets are actually formed, especially, I'm sorry to highlight social services, I'm assuming again that they actually build in budgetary provision to actually accommodate a certain level of sickness. Ben, I was aiming that at you.
If I come in, yeah, directors are expected to make reasonable assumptions and make assumptions over levels of likely absence and manage within the budget levels accordingly. So you will see if there is excess absence or excess other reasons, you will see that starting to manifest in service overspending as one of several things that could cause service overspending. You will be aware in recent times, directors have been very successful at managing within those budgets, but I again refer you to the answer I gave earlier, which is I will be giving updated advice on top of what is in the report to Cabinet on Thursday, not directly related to sickness in itself, but you will see a much more challenging position, which should not be surprising given the state of the public finances.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I think that's it. Just one sort of comment from me. Obviously, the sickness levels are higher than what the council would want to be faced with in the current climate. And I also recognise the efforts that's gone into training and support and the advisors and the occupational health investments that have been made. But I just wonder, not a question for you to answer, but if at some point you can evaluate the effectiveness of the occupational health input into reducing and driving down absence through sickness, I think that would be a worthwhile task undertaking.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Occupational health doesn't sit within my remit, but I'll certainly take that back to the relevant heads of service to trust that they do that. Okay,
I just think we need to make it sure that we get in our value for money from the investment in occupational health services. Okay, can I thank you, Adrian, for that report? Are you saying to deliver the second report on employment of agency staff?
Yes, I'm afraid it's me again. So yes, okay. I'll provide again a sort of further update on the employment of agency staff audit report, and you'll be aware that back in 2019 and 20 there was an internal audit undertaken which achieved an assurance level of moderate. Since then, there's been a further audit which moved the status from moderate to substantial, which is very pleasing, I believe. In terms of the actions that have been undertaken, there are regular reminders that are sent out to managers to remind them of the requirements of the agency worker policy, which, as you will be aware, was updated and launched fairly recently, and to let you know that there is a competitive tender process that's underway, re-tendering for the provision of agency workers generally across the council, but also specifically for social services provision. In terms of section 3, to highlight that, you know, in terms of the numbers of agency workers, there has been an increase in recent months in the provision of agency workers, particularly in adult services, and that is really primarily to ensure that there is sufficient cover for provision of what are key and essential social care services, but that only makes up 4% of our total workforce in that area, and these are primarily part-time employees that are brought in to provide cover in the social care areas. So that's reflected in those social services figures. In place, you'll see the narrative there in respect of waste parks and cleansing. Again, there continues to be measures to attract and recruit candidates into permanent roles, which also includes those who are currently on agency worker terms, and that has been quite successful. But there has been a seasonal increase as we've not been able to recruit into seasonal roles, which is reflected in the numbers there. In highways and transportation, there have been additional roles created primarily through economic recovery fund monies that will be in place until March of 2023. So that reflects an increase in highways and transportation in that area. Those are primarily the main areas where there are agency workers engaged in the council. There are, of course, pockets of agency workers that are employed in ones and twos in other areas, and again, that's reflective of the need for us to bring in temporary resource to meet short-term needs in those particular areas. So again, I'm happy to field any questions.
Thank you, Chair, and Adrian for the report and the presentation. Your report item 4 highlights to us that this is a big money area. This is almost £6 million on agency and contract staff. So if I look at the table then in 3, I can see 175 in place alone, and I'm advised that there was some probing of this area when the place director attended the Governance and Audit Committee. But it does look to be quite deep-seated. If you look along the trend there, you know, it's up and down, but it's around about the 170, 160 mark. So are you able to tell us, you know, what is the fundamental issue affecting, I guess, particularly waste parks and cleansing, and why have the measures that are outlined in the report not yet proved to be effective in bringing down the number?
I think to some extent there will always be a requirement for agency workers in that area. I can't really answer fully for the head of service in that area. But you know, I think generally there is a requirement for us to bring in agency workers to meet the ongoing need to provide that essential frontline service. You know, as is mentioned in the report, you know, there have been measures to recruit 104 new starters and trainees over the last 5 years, and 30 new trainees who will be starting or have already started this month. You know, and you know, without going into the detail of that, you know, I think it's recognised that there are some requirements for us to bring in agency workers into that area, but we'll always intend to recruit wherever possible into that team on an employment basis, so to speak, as opposed to an agency worker basis.
Thank you, Adrian. Julie Davis.
Thank you, Chair. Adrian, thank you for this very useful report. And the table contained within section 3 is also useful to see the movements in terms of agency staff numbers. But it's not clear to me from the information provided whether there's been a reduction in the numbers of agency staff who were employed for more than 12 months. So are you able to give?
Again, I can provide that sort of further detail at a later date. I haven't got that information in front of me, but you know what we will always do with managers is to identify areas where we can convert agency workers into employment contracts. But you are right. You know that is something that that we need to keep on top of, should we say?
Okay, thank you.
Adrian, can I ask for a future report that detail is included? And also if you can pick up where there is high usage of agency, if you can include the percentage of staff sickness in that area as well.
Yeah, sure.
I think we've asked for that information before to see if there's any correlation between high usage of agency with high use of sickness. And I know we've asked internal audit to look at that as well. Sorry, Mike, I missed you earlier on.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, thanks, Adrian. Yeah, in regard, of course, obviously, cleansing and parks are obviously amalgamated as one department, but within the umbrella of that service, we've got lots of services in regards to, especially then waste management. You've obviously got the waste collection teams, you've got the recycling teams, you've got the cleansing and litter picking teams and other areas, but also then you've got parks for ground maintenance in different areas as well. Are you able to give us the exact number of employees in that now new section, that amalgamated section? So we'll have an idea of what percentage, perhaps the numbers of staff we got employed, what the levels of sickness. But of course, because you know we've got these, especially the cleansing side, this is an important service because it's a frontline service. And people expect that service to go on every day. They not expect the service not to operate, you know, because if something happens in another service, say somebody was within the librarian services short, and nobody will know any different. But when you've got a couple of 1,000 tons of refuse on the streets and that's not being collected, there's a big issue. So it's important, obviously, this service is operational every day. But if you could perhaps find that out for us, Adrian, the overall figure of that now amalgamated service, so we can have an idea then with the amount of agency staff. And it also it's very nice to see and encouraging that some of those staff are now being taken on permanently by the council.
Yeah.
Thank you,
okay.
Chair.
Yes.
Thank you,
yes, certainly I can do that. Just on a point in terms of, you know, should we say attracting and recruiting workers in that particular area. We have done a lot of work to make that sort of application process and the assessment process more appropriate to that service area and the types of workers that would look to work in that particular field. So we've certainly tried to do our best with regard to encouraging applications from that set of workers.
Thank you, Adrian, and thank you. Did you have another question, Gordon?
Thank you, Adrian. Look, on the chart on page 3, direction of travel, there seems to be no instance where the general use of agency is less at the end of the year than it was in the beginning of the year. And when I go then to page 130.3, you say that the use of contractors, particularly in beach and toilet cleaning, is to avoid the use of agency workers. Now, I assume that is because contractors are cheaper than agency workers. So why would this not be the direction of travel to go on a more general basis when there is a very high level of permanent agency workers?
So, sorry, are you referring to, is it point 3 where it says we are using contractors to supplement toilet and beach cleaning following unsuccessful seasonal recruitment to avoid the use of agency? Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, I assume you want to avoid the use of agency because contractors are cheaper.
Well, how I've read this, and this is a comment made by the head of service. How I read that is that we would have wanted to avoid the use of agency, so we tried to recruit into seasonal fixed term employment roles, but that was unsuccessful, so we therefore had to bring in agency workers, and maybe it's terminology here, we needed to bring in agency workers to undertake those roles because we were unsuccessful in recruiting through our normal recruitment process.
No, it actually says you're not using agency workers, you're using contractors.
Yes, I think that's probably the terminology, the wrong terminology used by the head of service there. So in that really refers to agency workers.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Adrian, and thank you everyone for those questions. And again, thank you, Adrian, for coming to present those papers and for answering those questions. And if you could take away the requests that have been made by members for additional information for future updates.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you. If we can move on to agenda item 10, this is the Public Services Ombudsman of Wales annual letter. And if I could welcome Sarah Lackenby to present this report for us. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. Just briefly to highlight the key parts of the report. So the Ombudsman annual letter, it's about complaints handling performance of the council for last year, 21-22. 1.4 of the report also highlights some of the work that the council undertook last year as well. And obviously I'll go into more detail of that when I bring our own annual complaints report, which will be nearer Christmas. All councils continue to be impacted by the pandemic last year, and this is reflected in the Ombudsman's letter and recognised by the Ombudsman with the general rise that there was in complaints. However, the interventions by the Ombudsman remained relatively the same. So although complaints went up, their intervention was the same. Section 2.2 highlights activity the Ombudsman undertook during the year. And you'll also see the council's performance. So of all the complaints, there were 10 which were received by the Ombudsman that required intervention with regard to the council. 4 were upheld and 6 of those were early resolution voluntary settlement. And then finally in 2.3, just the Ombudsman requests. This report is obviously presented here to the Governance and Audit Committee and also to Cabinet. That we continue to access training, which we have been and continue to do so. And the next session is with social services next month. We have aligned, our policies are aligned, and we did do a review of the policies last year. We do submit our quarterly returns on time. We'll continue to do so. And the Ombudsman asks that we do respond with regard to the letter by Friday. So obviously there's been a delay to meetings due to the period of mourning, but we do intend to meet that deadline of Friday. Thank you. I'm very happy to take any questions.
Sarah, can I just ask one question? Is this letter going to the Scrutiny Committee because they've got a key role in reviewing the complaints process and the Ombudsman's letters that come in, and our role is around assurance. So how are you going to square that off?
So the Ombudsman asks that the letter in particular comes to yourselves and to Cabinet, which we do every year. Scrutiny's role is slightly different because Scrutiny will look at the detail of performance. So the letter is included in the overall report, but a much wider report goes to Scrutiny, and that's scheduled to go. It'll go in the spring. So the report that it comes, the council's report that comes later to yourselves is slightly different. That's around assurance, but the wider report around the detail of complaints, but also that includes comments and compliments as well. That goes to Scrutiny. And we do include the letter there, but it doesn't have to go to Scrutiny. It's the overall main report that goes to Scrutiny, and that'll be in the spring. It also goes to the different Scrutiny panels. So it will go to both social services Scrutiny panels as well. which is again different detailed report that goes, which is around the actual detail of the complaints. By courtesy, we also include the Ombudsman's letter for completeness, but it doesn't have to go there. The two areas where the letter has to go is yourselves and Cabinet. Does that help?
Yes, it does. But I think from my perspective, and I'm sure my colleagues and members of the committee will comment, that I think we note the report, but with regards to assurance, we need to see the full picture of the work that's done by the scrutiny committee and also the internal audit work that I know is in the plan to audit the process as well. So from my perspective, I've only been looking to note this letter and report, recognising there's further information we need to see. Do I have any questions from members around this? No questions, no comments? No? Julie?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Good morning, Sarah. Appendix B to Appendix A, which shows that of the complaints received by subject, 13% were related to complaints handling. So I was looking for an update on the IT complaints database that you've mentioned in previous sessions, and whether you think that the complaints handling situation will improve when this is introduced.
Yes, morning, Julie. Yes, I do think that is the case. The system is still being developed. There's been some delays due to other areas that have needed to be done related to payments out for cost of living and those kind of payments. So it's they've been taking a more urgent priority, but we are planning to get it live by the end of the year. So yes, I do think that, because I think part of it is the way the system will work in terms of a greater awareness and the escalation, automatic escalation as well through the system, rather than at the minute everything is sort of manual handling of that. So obviously it's recorded on a database, but the recording is all done manually, whereas a lot of it will be automated with the new system, which will help, I think. So I do think that would help, yes, but we'll have to wait and see as well in terms of when that system's live, and I think monitoring year on year as we usually do.
Thank you.
Well,
Chair, thank you. Well, look, I will just come in and underline the points you made earlier, Chair. In particular, I think I'm just a little bit concerned about a point that's made in the letter, and perhaps we could go to that. And I'm conscious here that that you're due, Sarah, to, as you mentioned there, make a reply on behalf of the council to the Ombudsman in response to the letter. And in doing so, I just want you to be absolutely accurate in how you handle a point that's made. And if I can just find the page, I'll help you. It's a section here that talks about complaints made to the Ombudsman. I think it's in the appendix, and it's on page 144. Halfway down, it says, "I would also welcome your feedback on your Governance and Audit Committee's review of your authority's ability to handle complaints effectively, so that we can take this into account in our work and support its work on the handling of complaints." Now, just to underline the point of the chair earlier, until we receive the review of internal audit, we're unable to provide an objective assessment of the adequacy and effectiveness of the complaint system. So we're not going to roll up our sleeves and delve into it ourselves. We were delighted to have your presentation on the complaint system earlier in our training, and that was appreciated. But I think you will understand that until we have the audit review, we're unable to make a judgment in the way that's being sought there in the letter. And I think if you could reflect that when you reply, it would be very helpful, just to be clear on expectations here. Thank you.
thank you, Phil. Is that okay if you can do that, Sarah?
Yes, absolutely no problem. And I've got a meeting this afternoon as well, an All Wales meeting with the Ombudsman's office. So we'll I'll raise that as well, because this it might be a similar issue which is being raised across Wales as well with colleagues. So I will definitely reflect that in our response. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Phil, for reinforcing that. No other questions? So, okay, thank you, Sarah, for coming to present that. If we can move on then to agenda item 11, agenda items is deferred. So if we can move on to agenda item 12, which is Audit Wales report. And Gillian? No one, is there?
Hi, yes. Thank you, Chair. And really looking to bring in Richard Rowlands and the officers on this, because the letter you see before you at agenda item 12 on page 316 is something we did before the summer, as you can see by the date, and it was really a stock take as to where you were in terms of your progress in responding to the Local Government and Elections Act 2021 at the time, in the same way as we've done across all of the councils. So really just a progress update at that time. I'm sure you'll have moved forward since, so quickly take you through it. As you can see, we didn't look at everything that the Local Government and Elections Act requires of your council or any other council in Wales, but we did particularly pay attention to your arrangements for self-assessment and panel assessments, and some positive attributes there set out in terms of how you were going about that, including using or modifying the Future Generations Commissioner self-reflection tool as part of that. And also we looked at the arrangements that you had in place for the consultation duty and participation strategy that the Act requires. And again, I'm sure you've moved forward on that, but you were working on it at the time. So look forward to hearing an update on that. We also looked at your arrangements in terms of the changes for your governance and audit committees, and here we are today. So obviously up and running and going full speed. And also we quickly touch base on where you were at the time in terms of establishing the CJCs, but obviously you will note also that we are doing a commentary piece of work across the CJCs currently to see where all of the councils are in terms of that, and the CJCs in particular. So we've been working directly with the CJCs on those, and a commentary will come to you as all CJCs in due course once we've done that work. And then we also asked you about what your thoughts were in terms of the use of the general power of competence that's in the Local Government Elections Act. And I think you were giving it some thought about going forward as part of your revised commercial strategy. So really high level, part of our ongoing assurance and risk assessment, just a stock take as to where you and other councils were at the time, but looking forward to hearing from Richard if there's, or not if, what progress has been made since.
Okay, thank you, Noan. Is Richard or Ben wanting to comment on that?
Nothing much to add to what's already been said, Chair. Just to point out, for example, that some of the information in the letter we've taken note and built into our annual review performance, particularly the commentary around how we can improve the consultation and engagement elements of the self-assessment. So that's been cited as an area for improvement within our annual review performance. And some of the other aspects, for example, around the city deal, we provided the latest update, as was at that time within the last report on partnerships that came to the committee. So nothing more to add beyond that, Chair. I think largely what it does, it provides a sort of a status update as at that time where we were with these particular things, and some of those things we're still moving forward with, for example, the participation strategy.
Okay, thank you very much, Richard. I know he was going to comment on the publication strategy later on in the action plan. Are there any comments? Julie Davis.
Could I just ask, Non, whether you've experienced the same lack of participation in other local authorities? And if so, is there any best practice that can be shared with Swansea?
Thank you for asking that question. It was exactly the same question I was asked in Ceredigion Governance and Audit Committee. Just been, you've all rearranged your governance and audit committees for the same day. It seems so. Thankfully to Zoom, I'm able to zoom in and out of all of them. So it was the same question, and we're still finalising the work on this. And yes, everybody's feeling their way on this, and have tried different things out. I think in terms of democracy, people have been more engaged, I suppose, in democratic arrangements because you can zoom in to see the meetings in that sense. But what we hope to do is pull together all of the kind of common themes and messages that are coming out of these touch base reviews that we've done as part of the assurance and risk assessment, and then formulate kind of a national picture of what's coming out. So I'll be able to update you in future once we finished all of this work across all of the 22, but everybody's dealing with different things in a different way. But suffice to say, everybody that I've been speaking to are sticking with a hybrid working and trying to engage as many people as part of that, but also making use of the social media and various things too.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Non, for that. Any other questions? No. Gordon?
Yeah, thank you, Non. I'm new to this, so forgive me. I wasn't in when this was first mooted, but what sort of functions are these committees going to perform, and what areas do you expect them to be looking at? And is there a sort of common agenda across the whole of Wales?
Sorry, just to clarify, did you mean the governance and audit committees?
No, the CJCs.
Oh, CJC, sorry, apologies for that. CJCs across Wales are set up as they have been, and the commentary at the moment is going to be looking at how the CJCs have been set up and the roles that the relevant partners are playing as part of that. In terms of your CJC that involves you, you had set it up as was expected in that sense. So it'll be interesting actually to hear views of the CJCs coming out of that commentary. I can't offer anything in terms of opinion or judgment or anything at the moment because we haven't done the work. Hopefully in a few months I'll be able to answer that question a bit more fully. But obviously it's a direction that the Welsh Government wants to take local government and in terms of how they work together with their key partners. So we'll see how that works throughout this year, and hopefully that commentary will help inform the future of CJCs.
Yeah, could I just say, yeah, the CJC meetings around the area of scrutiny and planning and that, we were due to meet on the 23rd, unfortunately through the sad loss of the late Queen. That was postponed, but we're sent meeting dates for November. So we're waiting for all members who are on that committee to send responses back to the officer that's coordinating our meeting. So that's so shortly we should have a final date in for the meeting to take place.
Thank you very much, Mike. Any other questions? No. Can I thank you, Non, for this position statement, as I would call it at the moment, but also more importantly for the information around the other regulatory reports that have been published or work in progress, etc. I think that information is very valuable to the committee. So thank you very much for that. And head off to your next Governance and Audit Committee by the sound of it. Okay, if we can move on then to agenda item 13. Yeah, it's the timetable. Bear with me. Going to take this one on?
Yes, that's fine. So agenda item 13, as we bring to you and all governance and audit committees, should you wish it on the agenda going forward, is that work programme update, where we are on various things, and not just us, CIW and SN too. So it's a summary, a quarterly summary, although this is the quarter 1 summary, so up until the 30th of June. And as Richard pointed out, it didn't include at the time some things we'd published since, but you'll get that at the quarter 2 update. So everything that we've published since June will be in the next iteration, the quarterly update. So it's just to bring you up to speed and keep you in the loop, really, where we are on various bits of works. Financial audit work is in there, and also our performance audit work, both in terms of local and national, which is ongoing, and hopefully bring to a close the 21-22 sooner rather than later. And then we've got national studies in there and others. So what we like to do is, when we have published something on our website, is then put the link in the column where we say whether it's complete or whatever. If it's there, we put it in so that you have a kind of anchor point to go to click on to read at your leisure. So hopefully that gives you an update where we are. And happy to take any questions, as Gillian is for any of the financial audit work too. Diolch.
Thank you very much, Norm. That's very helpful, very useful for this committee. Any questions? No. Okay then. Thank you, Norm. Thank you, Gillian. If we can move on to agenda item 14, which is the Governance and Audit Committee Tracker Report. Are there any questions or comments on the tracker report? This is an important document, so we can ensure that we pick up anything that we've requested or any additional work that we required at previous meetings. I know we've still got some ongoing, but we've also got dates and when we're expecting them to come back to the committee. So I don't know whether there's any particular questions or comments anyone wishes to make on that. Not seeing any hands up on this one. No. Okay then, if we can move on to the Governance and Audit Committee work plan. Similarly, this is an important document that we use to ensure that we're receiving all the information that we need. And I've spoken to Hugh because we were expecting in September the public participation strategy, which you would notice is not in the pack. And Hugh has kindly come along to update us on where the council is for that particular strategy. Hugh, can I hand over to you?
Of course, thank you, Chair. Yeah, firstly, as the Chair says, apologies for not getting the public participation strategy to you for this meeting. Just to update you, it's been passed to me to drive forward now. The public participation strategy supports the council's consultation and engagement strategy. The public participation strategy has been drafted. I've had it approved by the leadership team. It will now proceed to a 4-week public consultation period commencing in October, or even possibly in the next couple of days otherwise. The outcome of that public consultation will determine when the public participation strategy will be submitted to council, but it's expected to go there in December 2022 or January 23 at the very latest, depending on the outcome of the consultation. And then after it's been to council, obviously, if you wanted to come here, I can arrange that. Nothing further to add.
Okay, thank you, Hugh, for that. Yes, I would like to see the document coming back to us at some point, and I think we'd be happy to receive it following its early stages of consultation. That's possible.
Well, it hasn't gone before councillors yet. It's gone, as in it's going out to the public consultation. After that,
I hope to get it at full count at the council. I'm hoping for December council. I don't think it'll be timely to get it here, but if it can, I don't have a problem with that. Just to outline what it is, just give some background to it. It stems from the Local Government and Elections Wales Act 2021, whereby each council must have this strategy, and all it does, in effect, is sets out in one document all of the useful websites that the public would need to participate with the council, be it petitions, be it joining committees, finding out what councillors are doing, how to become a councillor even, and the type of finances they get. So there's nothing in that document that isn't readily available at this stage.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. Bill? No, you're okay. That's very helpful to clarify that. Thank you very much. No other comments on that then. Thank you for spending time with us this morning. It is nice to see you as well.
Sorry, Chair, can I just come in very quickly? Is
Yeah.
Councillor Walton
Yes, of
online?
course you can.
Yeah, just a quick comment to reinforce what you've just said about the report that Hugh's referring to. I totally understand he's saying that all of this is there already, but it'd be useful to see exactly the compilation of this report and just make sure nothing's missing apart from anything else. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Walton. No other comments? Any other thing in the plan? Again, feel free to contact me outside the meeting if you see any gaps or anything that needs to go into the plan. I'm not aware that there is any. And obviously the performance report will come in at a later date as it's been deferred today. If there are no other questions or comments, then can I draw the meeting to a close? And once again, if I can thank everyone for attending both online and in person, and also for your participation. It makes my life a lot easier as chair of the meeting. And I'll draw that meeting to a close now. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Chair. Bye bye, everyone.
Thank you, Chair.